which we see to identify कि हम कर क्या सकते हैं data के साथ. So generally जो data होता है business world में some sort या तो time series data होगा. Time series data इससे हो सकता है कि आज शेयर स्टॉक मार्केट का शेयर का प्राइस ये है, परसों ये था, परसों ये था, 10 साल पहले ये था. तो जनरली कुछ अच्छा डेटा होता है. या फिर बैंक इंटरेस्ट रेट्स कैसे चेंज किए ओवर द पास्ट, आपको इंटरेस्ट डेटा है. या फिर क्रॉस सेक्शनल डेटा होता है which has a call of a large number of things at the same time, and this could be a cross sectional data of say technology stocks कैसे behave कर रहा है Bombay Stock Exchange. So you're looking at the share prices of all the technology stocks there. या फिर Indian में बहुत सारे banks हैं, private sector banks, public sector banks, and the corporate उनकी bond rating. So how is all of them? So the bond rating. So this is a cross sectional data. या फिर panel data होगा जो दोनों चीजें मिला के होगा. And you can see the moment you start talking about data, the boring part comes into being, right? Because it has got quite a lot of it. So data के बारे में ना see my colleagues with phones. Should I stop, Dr. Mukherjee? Should I stop or should I continue?
Yeah, just a minute for small pause. Sound नहीं आ रहा है?
मतलब ये वाला जब होता है ना,
हाँ,
जब मॉनिटर से देखा ना,
हाँ,
तो थोड़ा सा साउंड
sound नहीं आ रहा है? नहीं होता है, लेकिन हम जब
So one of the beauties of being a professor कि पूरी हिस्ट्री में प्रोफेसर्स हैव गॉट अवे विद स्पीकिंग देयर माइंड, राइट? एंड वन ऑफ द ड्रॉबैक्स ऑफ बीइंग दैट कि कुछ ज्यादा अपना माइंड बोल दो तो लोगों को दुख लग जाता है. Continue? Okay, let's look at another thing which is happening in this data. So this is again supplier payments. What do you see is happening in this data pattern? It's repeating some sort of periodicity, right? Now, based on these two data patterns, you can immediately think कि हम कर क्या सकते हैं data के साथ. हमारे पास past data है. या तो हम ये बता सकते हैं कि past हुआ क्या है, या फिर हम try to predict the future में क्या होगा. कुछ और एग्जांपल्स हम ले सकते हैं. So here is a currency conversion rate data in US dollar and Indian rupees. Now what do you think might be happening here? With time, the US dollar has kept on becoming stronger. So is the Indian economy going down or is the American economy going up?
Indian economy
is going down. Classic answer from Indian students. Sir, इसमें डूब ही रहा है. कुछ नहीं हो सकता हमारे देश का. छोटा के विदेश जाना है. Right? Now, don't get me wrong. So if I pull leg of anyone, don't be offended, right? Because this is British pound versus Indian rupees. The same scale as pound. अब आप क्या करोगे?
At some point, the Indian rupee value is
or is the British economy going down at the same time compared to American economy? But then the question is, does currency value reflect the strength of economy? And there lies the problem when data scientists look at data without understanding where the data comes from. And this is a problem which we always have. Most of the times जब हमको डेटा पर काम करने को कहा जाता है, हम समझ ही नहीं सकते डेटा आ रहा है, कैसे आ रहा है, क्यों आ रहा है. There is no way on earth we can be expert on everything, right? This is euro versus Indian rupees. Now, if you were a canny investor, you can see it. इसमें तो कुछ cyclic patterns दिख रहे हैं, right? तो जनवरी में यूरो खरीदो और अप्रैल में यूरो बेचो, and you can make loads of money by doing this thing. hoping that this pattern continues. Can somebody close the door, please? Right. So you can assume that the same pattern continues in future, because that is the whole idea of prediction, right? We look at the past. Past में हमने ये देखा है और आपकी कुंडली बनाएंगे फ्यूचर में क्या होगा. So as you can see, my surname is Choubey. तो अगर मैं इंजीनियर नहीं बनता तो मेरा एक बैकअप प्रोफेशन was the profession to be the kundali maker, and much nicer to predict your future without having any data. So this is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And you can see, if I look at the data from 2017 to 2020, it has been constantly increasing. So if I predict my future to be based on this, what would I have said? Market improve कर रहा है, invest करो, market और improve करेगा. Okay. Okay, let's use the column mic then. Where is it? This looks like I'm a call center employee. And I can fix your computer now. Yes, you'll have to help me. And don't use these things generally. Good. But what actually happened in 2020? एक market crash किया था, right? So this data doesn't say the truth about the market crash. And this has happened earlier as well. So when do you think that happened? You can see this is 07 market crashed. This is again Dow Jones Industrial Average. So you know what is Dow Jones Average? What does it measure? It looks at 30 prominent stocks in New York and looks at how they are performing. Okay. So one homework task for you would be is to go and see which companies are involved in getting the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Okay. It will also be interesting to look कि past में क्या हुआ, कौन सी company थी और कौन सी company बाद में निकाल दी गई. There used to be prominent countries जो अब नहीं है, prominent companies, not countries. So what happened in 07? The market crash किया था. Second wave of COVID? ये 2007 है कि 1907 है? ये आपने नहीं पूछा. So this is the 1907 crash. Okay? And same thing also happened in 1987. Do you know what happened in 1987? Something called Black Monday or Black Tuesday, depending on which zone you are in. So you can see that average was smoothly going up and then had a big crash all of a sudden. So purely looking in the past and hoping future will follow past is a little bit silly. But अब मेरी पिटाई होने वाली है, which I'm going to say, purely believing in general quantity is also a little bit silly. Now, this is very interesting. If you look at the long-term growth of Dow Jones Industrial Average, we saw कि अभी तक perform कर रहे हैं. Despite the fact there has been dips, you can see there has been collapses. It's fairly increasing. So question this then is, कितना average rate होगा? If I want to predict something based on this, what data range should we take? The second question ये है, क्या ये सिर्फ काफी है फ्यूचर प्रेडिक्ट करने के लिए? Good. There also sometimes what happens particularly to business data. Solutions हम लोग बाद में देंगे. Let's just look at the kind of data which we see. So सन 2020 में, this is the West Texas Intermediate Price. This is how you generally try to understand the
fuel market, the petrol, the oil market in the world, right? So something interesting happened to the West Texas Intermediate prices in 2020. It went negative. Essentially, market was saying कि भैया petrol खरीद लो और हम पैसे भी देंगे हमसे. So what happened at that time? Why did we come up with this? COVID ही कुछ और भी हुआ. COVID हुआ, there was certainly. So that was an external factor. That was not in control of market. And this is where, why, so सोच रहे हो कि मैं क्यों एक के बाद एक data आपको throw कर रहा हूँ. Right, let's come back to this. So business data analysis, unfortunately, depends on way more factors than simple data analysis, which is used in all other world. Right? जब आप कंप्यूटर विजन का एल्गोरिदम देखते हैं, एक डीप लर्निंग CNN मॉडल लगाते हैं कंप्यूटर विजन टू एक्सट्रैक्ट फीचर्स, इट्स अ वेल कंट्रोल्ड एनवायरनमेंट. आपके पास फिगर है, इट्स नॉट बीइंग इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय द एनवायरनमेंट. जब आप बायोलॉजिकल डेटा सैंपल पर ट्राई कर रहे हैं, अगेन दैट डेटा सैंपल इज वेल कंट्रोल्ड टू एन एक्सटेंट. मैं कह रहा हूँ बायोलॉजिकल डेटा व्हिच इज ऑलरेडी वेरी डाइवर्स. नेचर इज अ मैसिव डाइवर्सिटी.
The economic and business data has got so many inputs from so many angles. Pure simple neural network, pure simple artificial intelligence लगाना, maybe artificial intelligence, pure simple data analysis, time series data analysis की, past में data ऐसे evolve किया था, आगे भी ऐसे evolve करेगा, may not be the most optimal use. Actually, this is where artificial intelligence might be better. Because it assumes, of course, my combo better because right? So it is kind of assuming कि भैया कोई relationship नहीं है input output के बीच, कोई well defined relationship नहीं है. It's a black box. हमने data डाला और एक probability of data output आ रहा है. Rather than time series things that mean standard deviation या फिर moving average ये था, इसलिए moving average आगे भी यही होना चाहिए. We should look at another kind of data which you can have is, as I said, we could have cross-sectional data.
So this is the sales pitch of different type of goods in a normal shop, and the colors denote what's kind of sales efficiency which was there. That doesn't tell me much about the actual value of the data, but certainly tells me things like, मेरी पिटाई होगी. I should never talk about sausage and ham in India, right? ठीक है, इंडिया में वीसा है अभी भी. Let's look at another cross-sectional data then. This is a cross-sectional data on, say, some kind of GDP, so various type of things, GDPs, employment data, debt per GDP of different countries. Now here you're looking at a panel of things, right? You're comparing different countries. So अभी तक हमने दो तरह के डिफरेंट डेटास देखे फाइनेंशियल वर्ल्ड में, या तो टाइम सीरीज है या फिर एक पैटर्न है. अब सवाल उठ रहा है कि हम करें क्या इस डेटा के साथ, राइट? सो व्हाट डू यू गाइस जनरली डू विद डेटा? आप लोग किस ईयर में हो अभी? कैन यू टेल मी? ऑल दोज इन फर्स्ट ईयर ऑफ इंजीनियरिंग और स्टडीज, सेकेंड ईयर, थर्ड ईयर? So second year primarily. So by now you should know a little bit about data processing या फिर some sort of programming, right? So things which we can do with data is we can classify ये इस part का है या उस part का है, romantic movie है, action movie है, right? or somewhere in between है. Or we can do a regression analysis to forecast. एक हम फोरकास्ट कर, दूसरा हम क्लासिफाई कर सकते हैं. ये डेटा हमने ये जाना है डेटा के बारे में, अगला डेटा ये है ताकि क्लासिफाई चीज पार्ट का हो गया उस पार्ट. Or we could cluster. We have a set of data. Can we put it in different headings? Can we put it in different groupings? So generally ये तीन चीजें हम लोग करते हैं आर्टिफिशियल. Now we have to see how does this help business processes. Also the question is, generally we will be restricting ourselves to learning type algorithms. Again, पूरा computer science काफी complex होगा.
There's some glitch in
Audio.
Yes.
Okay.
There's supervised learning, which tries to figure out the relationship between input and output. And they end up doing classification or regression, and there are a number of other algorithms like that: decision tree, random forest, support vector machines, linear regression, and so on and so forth. You could have unsupervised learning, which essentially try to find some sort of structure in the data, and this is where you have things like A/B clustering, and some try to do both. There's a reason why I'm doing a fast speed. Because if I try to explain all of this in order to learn, so we'll come back to this very shortly, but for the time being, this is feedback. इसका साउंड कुछ ज़्यादा है क्या? ठीक है? And we also said there are large spikes of neural which are there, each its own pluses and minuses. We'll come back to these in the lecture tomorrow. But the final bit is the reinforcement learning, and so that we'll be looking at three different types of learning: supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning, to try to come and make some sense of business data. But before I jump to this data, I would also like to raise this very nice thing which we as computer scientists often forget, and our social scientist colleagues often do take it up. So, there has been, here's a very good example of how misrepresentation of data can take place. There has been a rumor going on after Andrew Wakefield's study on relationship between autism and MMR, to an extent that many young parents in Europe and particularly in US are refusing to give vaccination to their children, thinking that once you get vaccinated, you will get autism. Now, of course, there is a data which is somehow presented in social media. Look, more people are being vaccinated and more people are getting autistic. And it's a classic example of how data misrepresentation can take place. Here are some examples again from social media as to how the same thing can be represented in a different fashion. And here were these examples. This is looking at the debt of Greece and the Facebook number of users. And if you look, these two statistics looks very similar. As the Facebook number of users increased, the Greek debt crisis increased. So are these two related? Why not? Or for that matter, this one is one of my favorite one. So the house price index in US seems to follow a pattern when young children were named Emma. जितने लोग अपने बच्चियों के नाम एमा रखते थे, हाउस प्राइसेस भी वैसे मूव कर रहा है. They can't be related, right? But ग्राफ तो यही कर रहा है. तो अगर हम प्योर डेटा एनालिसिस से जाएं तो ये दोनों रिलेटेड होने चाहिए, right? Now here are some other ones. The first one plots the amount of science and funding allocated to research and development in US to the global temperature. So ज़्यादा साइंटिस्ट काम कर रहे हैं, वर्ल्ड ज़्यादा वार्म हो रहा है. So साइंटिस्ट को काम ही ना करने दो, ग्लोबल वार्मिंग नहीं होगी. Now the reason why I'm raising this, so we often look at correlation, particularly in business data, कि इसको करने से ये हुआ. And the question this then raises is this. If A and B are happening together, doesn't mean A is causing B or B is causing A. Okay? The question which you have to ask, would A have happened if B did not take place? A hua, फिर B भी हुआ. Would A have happened if B is not taking place, or the vice versa? So it's a very good example. I will give you this happened this year. Right? Could literally last few months. So Boston University decided to cut down the number of graduate students it will admit. Right? उन्होंने कहा कि humanities में हम किसी graduate student को लेंगे ही नहीं इस साल. Okay? At the same time, कुछ लोगों ने आर्ग्यू किया कि उनके ग्रेजुएट स्टूडेंट्स 6 महीने से स्ट्राइक पर थे and they asked for more money. Well, most people when they're on strike is asking for more money, right? So university had to agree to give them more money. Did it lead to them cutting the number of graduate students? Is it paying more money to our current students causing us recruiting less number of future students? Are these two related? So question you have to then ask is not this, that they are they related or not? Is if they were not on strike and if they were not given a salary raise, would the university still cut the number of PhD students? दूसरे एंगल में एक और रेज ये चाहता है कि जब भी गवर्नमेंट मिनिमम वेज बढ़ाती है, राइट, आपका अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ता है बिकॉज पीपल हैव टू पे मोर मनी सो दे रिक्रूट लेस पीपल. But is that a correlation, or people would have anyway recruited less because there is less money going around? So when we do statistics, we often do this thing. We often find some sort of joint association. We do correlation, regression, koi na koi mathematical approach we try to find between different random features. So what these tell us what the world is. They don't tell us what is causing that thing to happen. Right? दुनिया ऐसी है ये बताना बड़ा आसान है, बट क्यों है ये बताना मुश्किल है. And the same thing goes for statistical questions as well. So there is, in social sciences, you have this counter question. What if we change the world? How will the world be? So if I change my input parameter, if I change A, would B happen? And this is the mainstay of the social science thought process. And the way we need to appreciate social science thought process is business studies is very much a social science backed approach, right? We do not have all the data. We do not have all the understanding. Okay? And this leads us to the missing data problem. Assume that all those who watched yoga lessons on TV in the morning also watched क्योंकि सास भी कभी बहू थी. क्या वो लोग फिर भी क्योंकि सास भी कभी बहू थी देखेंगे अगर सवेरे योगा ना दिखाया जाए? And that's the right question to ask, not the other way around question. Okay, good. So what we are going to do for the next few days, we are going to do some theory, some coding. अगर हो सका तो, नहीं हो सका तो theory करेंगे. It will be good if you guys can install whichever is your favorite language. Have you been taught any particular language till now? Python, C++, Basic, Fortran. Pick any one. Download a decent interface. I mean, I would recommend Anaconda, which is a decent enough interface for Python. It has everything inbuilt. NumPy, SciPy, सब कुछ आ जाता है. The first task will be, by the end of today, we will learn how a perceptron behaves. And the first task will be if you can code a perceptron. Okay, so if you can code it tonight, fine, or else we will see it tomorrow morning. And pick whichever programming language you want to do. If you want to do MATLAB, that's perfectly fine for me. Okay. Right. 5 days won't be enough to appreciate this subject, so some of you would like to pick it much later. हमारे आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस में मोटी किताबों की कोई कमी नहीं है. Right? अगर आप लोग अभी भी किताबें पढ़ते हैं, the things जिनमें पन्ने पलटे जाते थे, and there are loads of web resources online जो हर नया वेब पेज आपको न्यूरल नेटवर्क समझाने की कोशिश करता है. The thing which I will maybe advise you is beware of this thing. Most of these are for computer scientists. Now there's a subtle difference. These are the people who are trying to appreciate how an algorithm works, not to implement the algorithm. And if you want to understand the theory behind it or work on the theory, that's perfectly fine. If you just want to implement the damn thing, they're not the nicest resources there. Right? I use Simon Haken's book on teaching neural networks and learning design, and I find that to be a fairly good descriptor. I also use Hagan's book, which should be sufficient for whatever we will do today, and it's freely available for you to use, download online. Freely, legally available being the right word. There are also decent books by Bengio and Goodfellow, the last one, which is a fairly good book. And there are tons other on deep learning or neural networks. So you can access them anyway. For the financial AI, I'll be using O'Reilly's Helpshish. This is AI in finance. Again, this is more because it's a bit more coding related, so you can learn how to do coding. But there are other books like Edward Zhang's AI for Finance or Kramer's Machine Learning and AI for Finance textbook as well. Remember one thing, this field is evolving as we talk. So there is no set standard as yet. There are things जो आपकी मदद कर पाएंगे, but it's not yet ready there yet. तो हम लोग primarily सीखेंगे from research papers. We'll be discussing 3 research papers as case studies. And now आप second year में हो, right? So reading research papers would be pain. And even it's a pain for professors as well. क्योंकि हम लोग research paper एक particular style में लिखते हैं. The style ensures कि हमें छोड़ के और किसी को ये समझ में ना आए. और समझ में भी आए तो कम से कम 2-3 साल जरूर लगे. So before I ask you to go and read research papers, I will give you a brief couple of slides on how to read a research paper. मैं कैसे पढ़ता हूँ. So I read the introduction and see कि does it make sense? कुछ समझ में आया? अगर कुछ समझ में आया तो I straight go to conclusion. I don't read the fact in between. अगर introduction और conclusion दोनों समझ में आए, then you go back and read the first part. The other thing, for most engineers, we don't like too many equations. We think we know maths, but हमें आती नहीं है, let's be honest. हमें सिर्फ engineering entrance exam निकालने पर maths आती है, right? So, one advice which I also in the first reading ignore all the equations, trying to appreciate the formulaic description, and then go back and look at the equations at a second reading. The other trick which many of my scientist colleagues do is they try to make an equation look fairly complex, then more complex than it is. आपको पता है bottom equation क्या कह रही है? This looks a very nice equation, right? अच्छा दिख रहा है, बहुत सारे terms हैं. Anybody can tell me what it is? Taylor series एक आंसर दिया आपने. Good, Taylor series तो है. बट पूरा इक्वेशन क्या कर रहा है? टेलर सीरीज तो ये वाला पार्ट है ना, x माइनस एक्स क्यूब बाई. किसका टेलर सीरीज है वो? साइन एक्स का, राइट? सो माय फर्स्ट टर्म ऑफ दैट इक्वेशन इज साइन स्क्वायर एक्स. साइन स्क्वायर एक्स प्लस कॉस स्क्वायर एक्स इज द सेकेंड टर्म log e to the power 1 divided by k factorial. No, this equation is 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. There's a very nice article online on how you can come up with this equation. I will leave you to figure it out. But this is a very common thing which you do, because 1 plus 1 is equal to 2 तो बड़ा सुंदर नहीं दिखता ना. We often come up with equations which are long and confusing. Right? Try to read full publications of either published by societies, IEEE or ACM. Proceedings of IEEE conferences, not necessarily. They're generally only 4 pages long, so be a bit wary of them. Good. So this is how you're going to read, and this is how we are going to appreciate this later, and I will grab a bit more water. So now I said my original speech was going to talk about history of computation as to history of neural network in business world. And as you can see, I have already changed my research, my delivery topic, and that will happen for next 5 days as well. So this is what my theory on history of computation is. Humans started thinking many, many years ago, right? And then humans thought, maybe somebody else can do our job, right? Particularly things like calculation and computation. बड़ा मुश्किल होता था ना. 635 multiplied by 3781. I can give it to my son to do, but मैं खुद नहीं कर पाऊंगा. So then we thought, why don't we make a machine which can do the calculation for us? And in the days of artificial intelligence, we are doing that thing. अब हम लोग ये सोच रहे हैं, can somebody else do the thinking for us? Right? So, why was computation started? Why did we start making computers? I'm sure आप लोग अपने first year lecture में history of computer जरूर पढ़े होंगे. Right? क्यों कंप्यूटर इन्वेंट हुआ था? क्यों लोगों को कंप्यूटेशन करने की जरूरत थी? सो स्टैंडर्ड हिस्ट्री लिखी जाती है कि साइंटिफिक कंप्यूटेशन करना था, कॉम्प्लेक्स क्वेश्चंस थे जो सॉल्व करने थे, राइट? सो ENIAC, ADAC, they were all EDSAC, they were all being used to solve complex scientific questions. Or they helped us in communication. So we have phones, we have internet, and all those. I'm going to tell you that this is entirely wrong. The entire birth of calculating machines was for business. And I will prove you. That's the first computer we talk about. कौन use करता था abacus? Who were the people who were interested in counting in the beginning? Businessmen. इतना पैसा आया, इतना पैसा गया. Right? सामान, इतने का सामान आया, इससे इतना सामान बना सकते हैं, इसलिए इतना प्रॉफिट कर दो. पहला कंप्यूटेशन मार्केट को जरूरत थी. So entire early days, I mean, this is Pascal's calculator, the triangle-based calculating machine. So his father was a supervisor of taxes. It's not Pascal's triangle, my apologies, it's just Pascal's calculating machine. And he figured out his father spends all his time on adding and subtracting numbers. और कभी कभार multiplication करने के लिए. So he went back and made his machine to help, which can add two numbers and multiply and divide numbers. It was very much used by the tax people. In medieval Europe, we used to have these counting houses. Essentially, हर business का अपना एक counting house होता था जो सिर्फ पैसे गिन रहे हैं या सामान गिन रहे हैं. और जब आप गिन रहे हो तो you need a way to record that number. Right? आप multiply, divide कर रहे हो. At the same time, in the turn of 18th and 19th century, एक बड़ी अच्छी चीज का invention हुआ logarithm का, and multiplication became easy. So a lot of logarithm-based mechanical machines, things like logarithmicons, came in market. Now I had this pleasure of reading the first manual of logarithmicon, and the entire market they were looking on was the business world. It also happened in our own computing industry. Who buys mainframes? Who needed big computers in the beginning? Okay, yes, the meteorological weather forecasters को बड़े computers की जरूरत थी, scientists को बड़े computer, पर खरीद कौन रहा था, कौन पैसे दे रहा था? And this is something which I picked from Wikipedia. So this is Bull Gamma 60, it's one of the earlier mainframe machine. And I looked at who are the people who bought it. 20 लोग खरीदे थे इसको. So AGV, पहला is an insurance firm, EDF is an energy firm, then BNP Paribas is a bank, Union is a bank, SNCF is the train company, RTT is the telegraph company, Urbenzine is a bank, GMF is a bank, Credito Italiano is a bank. So the people who were putting money into large machines were all in financial houses. तो भले हम कंप्यूटर का इतिहास कहते हैं कि साइंटिफिक कैलकुलेशन के लिए हुआ, हमारा बर्थ बिजनेस कैलकुलेशन के लिए हुआ है. ओके, सो द होल, अब थोड़ी टॉपिक फिर बदलेंगे बिकॉज वी आर जस्ट गोइंग थ्रू द हिस्ट्री. सो द होल आइडिया इन बिजनेस प्रेडिक्शन इज टू डू सम फॉर्म ऑफ प्रेडिक्शंस. Now in scientific computing we are doing quantitative prediction. ये नंबर आए हमारे पास, हमें एक नंबर और देना है कि फ्यूचर में क्या होने वाला है. In business world we are also doing qualitative predictions. कि कैसा market behave करेगा, how will the world move on. So we'll go a bit humorous for a little bit and ask the question, should we bother about predicting? So I said we'll be doing two types of predictions, quantitative predictions as well as qualitative predictions. And the quantitative prediction could be things like, कितने AI engineers चाहिए इंडिया को? The qualitative prediction of course is AI आ जाएगा तो हम सबकी नौकरी चली जाएगी क्या? Surprisingly in my social media group of my batchmate ये सवाल अक्सर पूछा जा रहा है, अपने बच्चों को क्या पढ़ाएं? हम लोग तो इंजीनियरिंग पढ़ लिए, आज से 20 साल बाद क्या भी इंजीनियरिंग की नौकरी रहेगी? And the question which I asked my student कि हम लोग अपने माँ बाप के प्रेशर पर इंजीनियरिंग पढ़े, तुम लोग भी वही काम क्यों कर रहे हो अपने बच्चों के साथ? Let them read whatever they want. So question is this: is AI going to kill all our jobs? What do you guys think? नहीं, किल करे तो अच्छी है ना, हम लोग तो AI बना ही रहे हैं ना, हमारी नौकरी रहेगी, बाकी सबकी चली जाएगी. Which is not a worst thing in the world, right? So it's best not to predict. कुछ भी predict करना बुरा होता है. तो हम लोग अगला 15 मिनट लिखेंगे why prediction should not be done before we come to doing some predictions. I hear echo on my own sound. So Albert Einstein did this famous prediction in 1932. There is not the slightest indication that nuclear energy will ever be obtainable. Right? So Einstein Sahab was against Lord Kelvin, the Kelvin temperature scale person. He didn't believe flying heavier than air flying machine will ever be possible. This is one of my favorite. This is when trains were introduced to Germany. The Prussian king said, why will somebody take a train and pay money when you can have a horse and go for free? क्यों दोगे भाई ट्रेन में जाने का पैसा? Oh, this is another good one. Ken Olsen, DEC, one of the larger digital machine, he raised this prediction. Is why would anyone want a computer in their home? इसकी कोई ज़रूरत नहीं होगी. And same Thomas Watson, chairman of IBM, predicted that there will be a world market for 5 computers. Remember, एक ज़माने में हम computers as big as this एक apartment building बनाते थे. And of course, Bill Gates' famous prediction: 2 years from now, Microsoft will solve spam messages. आप लोग अभी भी spam messages आते हैं वो नाइजीरिया वाले कि हमें इतने पैसे मिले हैं, हम आपको देने को तैयार हैं? नहीं आते आप लोग को? आते हैं. Now these were the fun ones. But even from technological prediction, we predicted many things. We have predicted stem cell, flexible electronics, bioethanol, और मैंने न्यूरल नेटवर्क का नाम वहाँ रखा है. Fullerene, carbon nanotube, graphene. अगर आप थोड़े young हो तो there was this big pudge about graphene that's going to do anything. Gene therapy. 1980s में high temperature superconductivity predict की गई थी. So even we as scientists get wrong. The reason why I have put neural networks is there has been 3 times when we have had AI summer, when people thought AI is now the solution to everything. So neural networks are mature enough to solve every problem in the world. And then after a few years, we realized, oh, they are not. So artificial neural networks can solve a large number of problems, but the resources they need would be very big. Same with our current variety of neural networks. We can put a GPU cluster to train quite a large number of problems. We can have a huge amount of data. But do we have that much electricity in the world? अगर सारे प्रॉब्लम हम लोग न्यूरल नेटवर्क से सॉल्व कर लेंगे तो उतनी एनर्जी कहाँ से लाएंगे? And some more which people. So every year, the IEEE, my professional society, we come up with technical predictions. Ki what are the technology which are going to change the world? And things which, I kid you not, you may not be able to read it from there, so I'll read it from my machine. In the 1982 edition, the prediction was to have intelligent CRT terminals. Remember what CRT is? Cathode ray tubes. So they thought the cathode ray tube, the big screens, will become intelligent. In 1990, they thought there will be practical voice-oriented typewriters. So we're still thinking typewriters will exist. And in 1987, we predicted there will be computer-controlled artificial organs. None of this ever worked. So now I'm going to tell you something which is again from social sciences. Have you heard of a very famous science fiction writer, Arthur C. Clarke? You haven't read Arthur C. Clarke? Read Arthur C. Clarke. If any two science fiction authors you should read is Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov. So Clarke predicted a lot of things which has happened in our world. Things like satellites was in his science fiction stories. So 2001 Space Odyssey and others are his. So there's a Clarke's law about predictions which goes something like this. When a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he's almost always right. But if he states something is impossible, he's very probably wrong. So if I tell you something, well, A, I'm not distinguished, B, I'm not elderly enough, not enough white hairs, but still. Then there is a second law, and as all second laws goes, even Clarke's second law is problematic, right? जब भी तीन लॉ किसी साइंटिस्ट के नाम होते हैं, दूसरा वाला हमेशा प्रॉब्लम कॉज करता है. When we were in school, the Newton's second law caused problem. Thermodynamics का second law कभी मेरी आज तक समझ में नहीं आया, पता नहीं आपकी समझ में आया हो या नहीं आया. The second law is discovering the limits of possibility to venture a little bit past beyond impossibility. But the third law is interesting. Any sufficient advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic or even from God. So if you take a mobile phone of our generation और 2000 साल पहले या 200 साल पहले आप किसी को दिखाते कि हम बस फोन से बात कर रहे हैं कि 5000 किलोमीटर दूर, तो यही नहीं कहते कि जादू है. साइंस से हमारे हिस्टोरिक टेक्स्ट बुक, रिलीजियस टेक्स्ट बुक में तो यही है कि लोग ध्यान लगा रहे थे और दे कुड टॉक टू सेजेस एल्सवेयर. ये कौन पता था कि एयरटेल पर थे या BSNL पर थे, या फिर ध्यान लगाने के बाद भी हेलो हेलो कर रहे थे, नेटवर्क नहीं मिल रहा है. यू नेवर नो. Oh, this is nothing. In 1951, we all thought that helicopters will be there for everyone. Well, cars हो गए थे सबके पास. It only took cars about roughly 100 years. I mean, 1880s, 1890s में cars बनने अच्छे से हुए. By 50, 60 years सबके पास cars थे US में. तो next stage would have been everyone having a helicopter in their house. Oh, this is interesting. So this is, we often get it wrong even otherwise. Do you know what is being advertised in that product? No, it's not the car. The company is Goodyear. What do Goodyear make? Tires. Good. So they actually came up with a tire where you can change the color. Right? And the idea was, depending upon the dress you are wearing, you can change the color of your tire, like you change the shoes. Very good technology. Never pick the market. So even if we predict something, the market may not like it. And of course, the prediction about us living on Moon and Mars has come every 10 years, and we never live on Moon and Mars. This was a prediction in 19... man would look like. We will have gadgets all around us, and we are not too far from there. Anyway, sometimes things which we have been working for too early becomes market maturity out of no reason. So I'll read you an article and I will ask you a question to guess which year is this from. Okay? So you reach over to your dashboard and push the button marked electronic drive. Selecting your lane, you settle back to enjoy the ride as your car adjusts itself to the prescribed speed. You may prefer to read or carry on conversation with your passenger, or even catch up on your office work. It makes no difference to the next several hundred miles as far as driving is concerned. Of course, it's talking about self-driven cars. This was a news item that a self-driven car had just been shown in October the 10th on a 400-foot strip. Which year do you think it comes from? 1990. One number? Any other number? सर हम तो 1990 के बाद पैदा हुए, उसके पहले जो हुआ हो क्या फर्क पड़ता है? When do you think we were experimenting with electric self-driven cars? You guys have no idea. I need at least 2 other numbers before I will proceed. So 1990 is wrong. Go backwards. 70s and 60s. Now guess the year. That's the car. 57. So we had the technology then. We haven't changed much. What about 3D vision? Have you been to one of those movies where you put a special goggles and you can see 3D stuff? When do you think they came in market? The guy who holds the patent is Hugo Gansbach. That's his 2D camera. These are 2 tiny TV cameras with both of them having a receiver. So sometimes things which look new are not necessarily new. And the same goes for neural networks. The kind of models which we are working on hasn't changed dramatically in the last 30 odd years. Okay? So predictions are difficult, more so with technology. But we love doing so because that allows us to live in a fictitious world. It generally translates our current understanding of science and technology, whatever we currently understand, and we create a hype for the future. Particularly for computer scientists, hypes have been good because it gives us more jobs. The problem is after a few years when the hype goes down, we also have lots of redundancies in the market. Okay. Let's stop right now. Break for lunch. What's the time now? Do you want to break for lunch or you want me to continue? It would be a different lecture than what we have. So we started talking artificial intelligence. I went on society and I will delve a little bit more on society because I think it's important for AI people to understand the impact of their work on society. Otherwise, we will create a monster which is going to haunt us. Something like nuclear bombs. We created a monster without appreciating its all ins and out. Right? और हम साइंटिस्ट एंड इंजीनियर्स हम लोग बड़े अच्छे हैं सर हमने डिसाइड कहाँ किया बॉम्ब गिराने का हम तो सिर्फ बॉम्ब बना रहे थे right so we will or for that matter let me ask you this question. This I'm taking from another colleague of mine. It's not my phrase. So if I come up with a technology which everybody in the world will use, okay, everybody will use it, सबको use करेंगे दुनिया में. सिर्फ एक छोटा प्रॉब्लम होगा, ये हर साल 50,000 लोगों को मार देगी. It will kill 50,000 people every year. Will you bring this product to market? कोई नहीं यार, सब लोग यूज करेंगे. Every 6 billion human beings, every human being will use it. Anybody interested in bringing it to market? कोई नहीं. Now I'll give an example. There's a product which exists in the market which does that. No, not everyone smokes. At least मैंने smoking शुरू नहीं की कभी. Vehicles, automobiles. Everyone in the world uses it. 50,000 people die every year, road accident or poisoning or maybe more. So, it's worth looking at our history. At a history of engineering. So for the next hour, we will look at the next 20 minutes, we will look at, then we come back and then we will start on neural networks. Generally, when we teach artificial, we don't do the ethical part. And I think we should do ethics right in the beginning rather than at the end. End में तो बोर हो जाते हैं हम लोग. पहले ही दिन तो दिमाग काम करता है. So let's hear about this now. So I'm going to do my professional job of my surname. Choubey हूँ तो थोड़ा बहुत कुंडली पढ़ना चाहिए ना. I'm going to read the kundali of everything. What's going to happen to our engineering? What's going to happen to the way we study? What's going to happen to our society? And how will our life change? Okay. To do that, what do? We look in past. So I'm going to do a refresher course of world history to you guys. आप बिजनेस पढ़ने आए थे, बिजनेस कल पढ़ा जाएगा, आज वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री पढ़ते हैं. राइट? हिस्ट्री स्कूल में किए थे, बहुत बोरिंग थी, किसी को अच्छी लगी? किसी को सेकेंड बैटल ऑफ पानीपत याद है? नहीं. And that's the reason why it was boring for us. We were not reading history of humanity. हम history of kings and queens पढ़ रहे थे. Agreed? And to be very frank, किसी दूसरे परिवार की history कभी interesting नहीं होती. So let's go through history of humanity. And I'm going to put an argument to you that history of humanity is best expressed as history of engineering. हमने जो भी किया है आज तक is history of engineering. और मैं बड़ा pure word use कर रहा हूँ. I'm not saying history of science. I'm saying history of engineering. Of course, engineer हूँ तो अपनी बात तो कहूँगा ही ना. I mean, we are the best, right? And I'm married to a medical doctor, so of course I have to be the best. So let's start by asking this question: what's an engineer? आप लोग सब engineering पढ़ रहे हैं यहाँ पर या science degree कर रहे होंगे? What is an engineer? तो आम जनता से पूछिए सवाल what is an engineer, तो कुछ ऐसा जवाब मिलता है यूरोप में कि हार्ड हैट पहन के फैक्ट्री बना रहे हैं या स्टील प्लांट करना है. राइट? इंडियन आम जनता से पूछिए तो कुछ ऐसा जवाब मिलता है कि बस कंप्यूटर टर्मिनल के आगे बैठे आपको प्रोग्रामिंग करना है. एग्रीड? इंडियन माँ बाप से पूछिए तो कुछ ऐसा जवाब मिलता है कि बस दहेज मिलेगा. ओके? और वाइस वर्सा. सॉरी, मैं अरुणाचल से आता हूं जहां लड़कियों को भी दहेज मिलती है. सो आई एम इक्वी omnipotent discriminator. This is what I think history of engineering is. It's not about humanity. It's about making structures, making components. And so our history does not start... Actually, sorry, I should rephrase it. जब आप history of engineering की किताबें पढ़ते हैं तो वो इनसे start होती हैं. बिल्डिंग बनाया, रोड बनाया हमने. I think that's not where history of engineering की history वहाँ से शुरू नहीं होती. इंजीनियरिंग की हिस्ट्री यहां से शुरू होती है. फायर, व्हील, वो भी किसी हमारे ही पूर्वज ने बनाया था. राइट? तो अब हम सोसाइटी को इंजीनियरिंग की हिस्ट्री के अनुसार से देखेंगे और 20 मिनट में पूरी वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री खत्म कर दूंगा. चिंता मत कीजिए, कोई वॉर नहीं होने वाला हमारे यहाँ. वॉर हमारे कारण से होता है, हम नहीं कॉज करते. राइट? सो the word engineer comes from a Latin word ingenium, okay, which originally comes from a person who operates an engine. Right? Now, word ingenium बड़ा interesting शब्द है. इसका original meaning है innate talent या फिर natural capacity. There's another word of English language which comes from ingenium, genius. So the word engineer and genius have got common origin. So again, good points अगर आपकी कभी भी शादी किसी दूसरे प्रोफेशन से हो तो to win a small battle. Originally we were all military engineers, and that's why you see this classification called civil engineering in universities, right? आप समझते हो कि ये कौन सा इंजीनियरिंग है जो कोई और फील्ड नहीं करता, वो हम लोग सिविल इंजीनियर्स पर डंप कर देते हैं. So let me make this thing clear for you. We are all civil engineers. Okay? Originally, there was military engineers जिसका काम था चीज़ों को उड़ाना. You know, जो catapults बेचते थे या फिर defensive rams करते थे या right? In modern day world, the military engineers still exist. They still blow things up. The civil engineers, I mean, so this is one of our forefathers. This is Bishop Gundolf of Rochester, who made the White Tower of London, and we think him as the first king's engineer, the first person from whom engineering starts. So whatever were people who were not doing military engineering, जो आर्मी के साथ लड़ने नहीं जा रहे थे, they all are civil engineers. That's where our origin comes from. I mean, we can go into the history of various engineering institutions. Around 1800s, 1700 to 1800 के बीच में, the formal education of civil engineering starts in different countries. And we end up with institutions to teach people to become engineers. Because उसके पहले हम लोग कैसे सीखते थे engineering? हमारे natural forefathers क्या हैं? Blacksmith, carpenters, right? आप किसी के साथ लग जाते हो, आप छोटू रहते हो पहले, छोटू ये कर दो, छोटू वो कर दो, and with time you become mechanic, right? So that was how engineers learned as well, through apprenticeship. So engineering history is never about person. So world history is all about kings, queens, inventors. Science ki history is about Newton, Einstein and all others. So I've given you 3 names here: Frank Whittle, Jack Kilby and Karl Heinz Brandenburg. Do you know who these people are? इन तीनों का नाम सुना है? हाइंज का तो सुना होगा, वो केचप भी बनता है ना, पर वो केचप वाले हाइंज नहीं है. So I'm kinda hoping कि आप लोग सब लोग इनके बनाए चीजें यूज किए होंगे. एटलीस्ट ब्रांडनबर्ग का तो जरूर यूज किया है. एक्चुअली आई एम डेड श्योर आप लोग अभी यूज कर रहे हैं उसका. So Frank Whittle came up with jet engine, Jack Kilby got the Nobel Prize for computer chip, and Brandenburg wrote the code for MP3 codec जिसके थ्रू मेरी वॉइस रिकॉर्ड हो रही है. ना मैं आपसे सवाल पूछूं कि न्यूटन और आइंस्टाइन का नाम सुना है तो आप लोगों ने जरूर सुना होगा. How come you have never heard of the engineer's name? Or how come the society doesn't know of us? Why? Well, one theory is that we are the bricks which go in the foundation of a building, right? कोई हमें नहीं देखता. But there's a better theory. We make money. Precisely. तो हम जीते जी पैसे कमा लेते हैं, नाम मिले चाहे ना मिले. So, let's do the history of world. That's industry 0.0. That's when we started. It's as old as human beings themselves. Right? हम क्या बना रहे थे? Hunting and farming tools. और सभी कोई engineer थे. Everybody was an engineer. आपको घर में हंटिंग करना है, स्पीयर बनाना है, एवरीबडी इज एन इंजीनियर. थोड़े बहुत ट्रेड्समैन हैं, दीज आर द कारपेंटर एंड ब्लैकस्मिथ, एंड द मेन फोर्स जो आप यूज कर रहे हैं इज योर हैंड. एग्रीड? What society happening? हम लोग जस्ट केव से निकले हैं एंड वी हैव स्टार्टेड फॉर्मिंग स्मॉल विलेज सेटलमेंट्स, राइट? Gender wise we are fairly equal. We have to use our hands. तो आप मेल हो चाहे फीमेल हो, आपके पास बराबर हाथ है. तो gender wise we are fairly equal at this time. And the only currency which you have is how much strength you have. And very soon we move into this concept of inheritance. हमारे बाप के पास कुछ था, हमें भी वो मिलेगा, या हमारी माँ के पास था, हमें भी कुछ मिलेगा. But society still fairly equal है. ओके, सोशियोलॉजी का पहला 3000 साल खत्म. What do we do for education? We learn in family, right? बहुत कम लिखने की जरूरत है. There are very few people who can scribe. रॉयल फैमिली, priest, और किसी को पढ़ने की क्या जरूरत है? तो एजुकेशन भी बहुत ज्यादा नहीं है. The only way you learn is to learn from a master. There's a very good example of Robert of Melun. People who studied with him were called melodinessents. So the only way you can learn is आपको सीखना है तो जाइए वन में जाइए, गुरुजी के साथ रहिए 7-8 साल और फिर वापस आइए. Right? अभी भी वही करते हैं हम लोग. What's happening to computation and electronics? We come up with number system. Right? We have got rudimentary counting devices. That's our origin of computing कर रहे हैं हम लोग. Computing का second part क्या होता है? Communication. Our communication is fairly local. It's one-to-one and fairly local communication. The third part which we're interested in is security and privacy. right? हर algorithm में हम लोग security and privacy की बातें करते हैं, and that's almost guaranteed at this point of time. आपका communication दो ही आदमी से हो रहा है, तो कहाँ से आपका? And when I use the word आदमी, it includes its gender neutral form में. So we have done the first aspect of computing industry, and now you can see why I'm telling you this story. Right? These are the things which are interesting to us. Computing, communication, security and privacy. And let's look at how this evolved over a period of time. Industry 1.0, पहले 1700 plus whatever before Christ era है, they are all covered in this landscape. इस बीच में हम लड़ते रहे हैं, borders form करते रहे हैं, we've created borders, destroyed borders and done all of those things. Right? This is the first change we see in society. Industrial revolution होता है, we start using water and steam as the force. Earlier our force was our hand, and now we are using natural forces to help us. We do division of labor, हमारे यहाँ mechanization शुरू होती है. Right? As a result, the farmer moves to work into factories. और हम factory towns establish करते हैं. हम अभी एक factory town में बैठे हैं, right? You know what does the word Rourkela mean? But the word Rourkela का मतलब क्या होता है? But isn't that the name of the old village here? She's close. She's very close. I think it means your fortress. Killa is Killa. Raur is a Nagpuri word. Means, yeah. So Raur is a Nagpuri word, also is present in Bhojpuri, which means respectful you. Aapka format hai. Okay? So we start creating these industrial towns. Now farmers and hunters move to work in these mill cities. And who are these people working in these mill cities? Men. As a result, the woman becomes the housewife and she loses her economic strength. So अभी तक वो बराबर की हिस्सेदार थी almost. All of a sudden उसके पास financial power नहीं है. Craftsmen lose their job. Now this is the first time we're talking about job losses, right? फैक्ट्रियां एक के बाद एक हथौड़े बना रही हैं, तो why will you need a village craftsman? Now we are getting something, a new class. Earlier हमारे पास दो classes थी. There was a rich class, the royal class, and everybody else was a farmer. Now we are creating a new class called middle class, जो फैक्ट्रीज में काम कर रहा है और अगर बहुत अच्छा किया तो शायद थोड़ा ऊपर भी जा सकता है. What are we doing to education? So कुछ liberal arts universities खुलती हैं and there is no division of subjects. अगर आप यूनिवर्सिटी जा रहे हो, खासकर ऑक्सफोर्ड जा रहे हो, तो आप या तो ट्रिवियम करोगे, आप लॉजिक, ग्रामर एंड रेटोरिक करोगे, या फिर क्वाड्रिवियम करोगे और उसके साथ यू विल ऐड अरिथमेटिक. अरिथमेटिक इंक्लूडेड एवरीथिंग इन साइंसेस. ठीक है. What's happening to electronics at this turn of the century? And you can see it's so correlated with one another. Accounting develop करती है. We need to count bigger numbers. अभी तक हम लोग सिर्फ फिंगर काउंटिंग से हैप्पी थे. Right? Now we need bigger numbers. We need calculating machines. So लोग Pascal's machines, logarithmic on ऐसे machines आ रहे हैं. This is 1870, 1880, 1900 की बात कर रहा हूँ मैं. Communication system में क्या हो रहा है? We're getting the postal system. अब हम चिट्ठियाँ लिख सकते हैं. So we can communicate a bit longer. Right? Security and privacy was lost because हम पहले बड़े village में रहते थे and we had our decent privacy. Now we are living in these apartment blocks. करीब रह रहे हैं. We are losing our closed privacy. By legislature, it was regained. There was a big legislation in UK which basically said nobody should read gentlemen's letters. Right? आपने चिट्ठी लिखी है तो किसी को नहीं पढ़ना चाहिए. And of course it was gentleman's letter. No, we were not sexist at all. And then we lost it again. Now let's move to the next cycle of our revolution, the industry 2.0. This is now when we are getting assembly line production. So earlier we had factories, but factory mein ek person could do the whole task, right? Now we are getting this specialized person, right? We are having mass production of things, and this all goes to Henry Ford, who got this concept of mass production. Now generalization is being lost. कोई भी काम करने वाला सब काम नहीं कर सकता. आप एक छोटा छोटा काम उठा रहे हैं, हथौड़ा मार रहे हैं तो हथौड़ा ही मारना है. कंप्यूटर साइंटिस्ट, मैकेनिकल इंजीनियर है तो मैकेनिकल इंजीनियर ही है. What is happening to our society? The cities evolve. Large scale cities evolve, right? There are industrially powerful cities. इनमें इंडस्ट्री है, वही सिटी पावरफुल हो रही है. Okay? Places like Munich evolve, Manchester evolve. Okay? We get better transport. Railways and steam engine comes in picture. People can start moving, and we start having a connected society. Okay? I can't say much about privacy and security at this time because इस space में 2 world wars भी हुए थे. तो world wars में ये दोनों का in the layman word बाजा बज गया था. Right? Security and privacy was gone. Now we do something really interesting for education at this time. हमने education mandatory कर दी सबके लिए. अब सभी लोग पढ़ने जा रहे हैं. स्कूल स्टैब्लिश हो रहे हैं. कुछ नहीं, अगर आप हायर लेवल ना पढ़े, स्कूल में सभी जा रहे हैं. उसके पहले स्कूल कम लोग जाते थे. Right? And we come up with this concept of Humboldtian University, which start undertaking research. So the idea is universities should primarily be doing research on top of teaching people. Okay. And newcome electronics comes in, right? You have vacuum tubes, you have programmable machines which have now come up. Do you know in 1930s, one of the professions suggested for young educated women were either to be a typist or to be a computer programmer. Because नाम अक्सर मर्दों का लिया जाता है, but the people who were doing the punched code entry were all, there were ladies who were doing this thing. Now, let's move to the next cycle. This happened in the end of, now see, something also interesting has happened. Our time scale is collapsing. 18th century tak kuch nahi, 1 century thing, then only for half a century. And we have complete change in our society which we are doing. We get computers. Now the factory workers are losing job. A normal automobile factory was hiring 20,000 people. Now it can do it with 1,000 people because there's a lot of automation going on. Right? हमारे mechanical engineering colleagues की नौकरियां static नहीं है. But now we need new type of workers. Workers who are computer savvy. इनको computer use करने आता हो. What happens to society? The world starts communicating. अभी तक, before that we had what we call as one-to-many communication. Radio और television है, सरकार ने जो बोला वो आप सबने देखा, right? Now we have many-to-many communication. I can communicate to that person can communicate to so on and so forth. Okay? In education, we get rapid advancements. बहुत universities खुल रहे हैं, सभी cities में ये खुल रहे हैं. But now we have got a rigid structure of education. आप पहले 12 से 14 साल स्कूल में पढ़िएगा, फिर 3 से 6 साल यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़िएगा. यूनिवर्सिटी में we will train you, and the idea is कि एक बार ट्रेनिंग हो गई तो जिंदगी भर उसी ट्रेनिंग से आपका रोज दाना पानी चल जाएगा. Now this is to see what happens when I stop speaking Hindi after a while. And we think we are enjoying the life a bit more. Of course, now that we are at this stage, we know, you can see the trend, what's happening to all of these aspects. So let's see what we might think of. So 4.0 has got all of these things, right? Earlier we connected people. Industry 3.0, internet ke through, we started connecting people. Now we are connecting machines. Every machine could talk to every other machine. Right? We are having unsupervised, we are having data centers which will extract information out of data without our involvement. So this is then raising the question, Are we going to lose our jobs? If we are going to lose our jobs, where will the new jobs come from? Or do we need to do jobs for society to sustain itself? Now, ये सवाल मेरे लिए अच्छा है. अगर बिना नौकरी किए पैसे मिलते ना तो बड़ा अच्छा है, right? I'll give you an example. जब हम फार्मर थे, हम हफ्ते में कितने दिन काम करते थे? 7 days. When I was a school kid, India used to work 6 days a week. Then it became 5.5 days. अभी आप कितने दिन? 5 day a week करना है. And Europe में already people are arguing for 4 day a week. So maybe we'll have more time to ourselves for getting the same remuneration. Now it is impossible to predict the trend of technology. और मैं कभी करूँगा भी नहीं कि future का क्या होने वाला है. But trends visible है, right? We'll have more data, more automation, more distribution, hopefully better quality of life, and government and security will be more secure here. Now, actually, this is a very interesting question because we thought now this many-to-many communication would make us more secure. People would know less about what we are communicating, but will hopefully also make us more liberal. Essentially, when I see somebody wearing a turban, if I see for the first time, I was like, "Ye kya kar rakha hai?" But now I'm seeing many people. I know there are 60 million of turban wearing Sikhs there. Or people in Europe see me. There's a brown-faced guy. It exists. One of the first girls I met in Oxford, she was telling me a story. When she was a little baby, a black man came to her house for the first time and she started crying like anything. कि ये कौन है नमूना? काले रंग का कोई थोड़े जो होता है. So the model was कि now that we are communicating many to many, हम लोग एक दूसरे के व्यू पॉइंट को समझेंगे. और एक दूसरे के व्यू पॉइंट को समझेंगे तो कभी ये सवाल नहीं उठाएंगे कि किसी ने बाल छोटे क्यों रखे हैं, किसी ने बड़े क्यों रखे हैं, किसी ने ये फैशन क्यों किया है, कोई इस तरह से जिंदगी क्यों जीता है. Right? We'll become more liberal. Unfortunately, strangely, we are not becoming more liberal. And this is where the same communication technology, which we thought will allow us to appreciate one another viewpoint, is now we are becoming entrenched. जहाँ तक जो हिंदी बोलने वाले हैं, मैं सिर्फ उन्हीं से बात करूँगा क्योंकि मुझे पहले तो 4 ही मिलते थे, अब तो इंटरनेट पे बहुत मिल जाते हैं, राइट? पहले मान ले मेरे पास एक कोई जादू का मंत्र होता था जो मुझे कोई बताया ये वाला मंत्र पढ़ लोगे तो हेवन बुक्ड है. पहले मैं 2 और लोग से बात करता था तो दे वर सेइंग अरे दिस स्टुपिडिटी है. अब मैं उसको व्हाट्सएप पर फॉरवर्ड करता हूँ, इस मंत्र को फॉरवर्ड कीजिए, आपका हेवन में रिजर्वेशन पिक्ड है. उसके बाद आप उसको 10 और लोगों को फॉरवर्ड करते हैं और फिर कोई दूसरे रिलीजन वाले आते हैं, उस मंत्र की जगह इस गुरुवाणी को फॉरवर्ड कीजिए, आपका हेवन में पोजीशन फिक्स्ड है. And we are forming our own silos again. So what we thought will be breaking these silos, we are forming them again. Now, what has happened to electronics? This I don't need to teach you. Or computer science graduates, you know what has happened to electronics in the last 50 years. Right? We have kept on increasing. We went in 2D world. We're making things bigger. And we are having large-scale sharing of information. We started with one-way controlled sharing of information. Radio and TV was controlled by government. To one-way free, we had many multiple channels. Then we started with two-way, but one-to-one telegraphs kind system. Then we had two-way, one-to-many. One person could talk to many, and the feedback could come. This has become a double-edged sword for us. We are sharing ideas, values, and opinions, and we are also growing all sorts of extremism of all types. And we are becoming a bit more siloed, irrespective of where we live. So earlier the model was, if you move to a different part of world within where you were born, so if you're a Bengali, you move to Andhra, you appreciate the culture there and then you entwingle in that culture. Right? A very good example I will give you is, I hope she doesn't like she does not getting annoyed with me sharing this file. A Tamil friend of mine, she got married to a Tamil boy, arranged marriage. My generation, people who believed in arranged marriages. But from Jamshedpur. So this Tamil family has moved to Jamshedpur many, many years ago when the Tata company gets established as engineers. So they have lived their entire 3 generations in Jamshedpur. So they are Tamil in name, but culturally they have become Jharkhandis. Okay? So this girl from Tamil Nadu gets married to a Tamil boy in Jamshedpur. She comes for a party in Jamshedpur. Hamare yahan hota hai reception. Now in Tamil Nadu, you don't touch feet of people every day. You only do it on a puja day and you do the whole Shashtang. The touching feet is not regular. But in Bihar, Jharkhand, that's like a regular thing. So she called me back after her reception, like, what's wrong with your society? My back is hurting. My parents-in-law made me bow down 200 times. So we had that cultural exchange. You live in somewhere else, you pick up the culture of that society. Now what's happening is even if we are living elsewhere, we are continuing to live in our own world. Because हमारे पास नेट से इतने लोग हैं जिनसे हम अपनी भाषा में बात कर सकते हैं, अपने कल्चर के बारे में बात कर सकते हैं. So we're not even talking to our next door neighbor in our own village. Forget about interacting. So this is a double-edged sword. The other thing which is happening is we're producing a huge amount of data. All of us are data producers, right? आप सबके पास cameras हैं? So how many pictures do you have on your phone? 1,000 plus. Everybody is just sticking at 1,000? You are so wrong. At least by an order of 10. The number of pictures you have produced in your life, which you have never seen ever again. Right? आपने एक फोटो खींचा, क्या किया आपने उस फोटो का? खुद देखा या फिर फॉरवर्ड किया? And that is never being seen again. So you're producing a huge amount of data which is being lost or left unused. Now you might think, what's the use of this data? Maybe there is, maybe there's not. Maybe there is just looking at our skin face, we could identify how our skin tone is changing and are we suffering from skin cancer. We also have a lot of choice which has been given to us, and we human beings, I can talk about us men, we are bad in choices. Right? Let me put all the men stand up, please. Just for fun. Just look at our trouser selection. There's black, blue, grey, and that's about it. Right? तो हमें कोई choice देगा purple color का trouser का तो हमें ना भाई black वाला ही दे दो. Right? So we were bad in choices. The example was given by men, but as a humanity, we are not very good in picking choices. Okay? Just think of it, we are almost always hoping for a better future and crying about our bad past. So, the reason why this is interesting is we're producing a huge amount of data, but we have very limited capacity to process this data. Right? So what do? We do selective use of this data. Data जो हमें अच्छा लगता है वो हम use कर लेते हैं. Okay? And this is where we also do mistakes in business world. When we're doing investment decision, when we're doing marketing decisions, when you're doing liquidity decisions. Right? Good. We stop now and we'll continue the discussion after this. Don't worry, history ज़्यादा नहीं पढ़ाऊंगा. We'll come back to neural networks, hopefully. Thank you very much.